Just be nice. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, hats, cats, and other folk. I'm Joe, and for reasons that will become clear, tonight's movie literally had more impact on my life than 9 years of Catholic school.
Bill.
I'm Bill S. Preston.
Who was Joan of Arc. And Ted.
Noah's wife. We're in danger of flunking most heinously tomorrow.
A force from the future.
Can we go anywhere we want at any time?
You can do anything you want.
Is putting history at their fingertips.
Let's reach out and touch someone.
They're traveling through time.
How's it going, Royal Ugly Dudes?
Put them in the Iron Maiden.
Excellent!
Execute them.
Bogus. How's it going, dude?
Faites-les thé au lait.
And they're making a big impression.
Historical babes.
Now they're home.
Everybody get together, remember who your buddy is.
To trash the 20th century.
You got a live one here.
Bill and Ted's
Excellent! Excellent!
Excellent Adventure.
Party on, dude.
Today's episode of Sofa Justice Warriors is entitled, Earning the Benefit of the Doubt, Be Excellent. I'm not only a guy who went and got himself a film degree, I'm also a third-generation projectionist. My grandfather ran movies. My father ran movies. I ran movies. Then, as these things happen, I was automated out of a job. Film went digital, and digital doesn't require a trained technician in the projection booth. So now I shout my opinions to about 67 people in the hopes of feeling like I'm at least sharpening the tools I was given. But in 1987, as I had before and would do so again, I sat in a uncompleted projection booth as my father installed the equipment that would allow so many others to enjoy the movie-going experience. That theater was the Metro Cinema in the University District of Seattle. I even remember the brand of projector. They were Simplexes. Years later, he would teach me how to thread those as I wandered that hallowed space during my summer vacations as a kid. Still years later, as an adult, I would be paid to do the same. It all felt very great American novel. And in 1989, and for many years thereafter, I regularly wandered the halls of that 10-plex watching whatever happened to be playing. I saw countless films in my youth that many people my age never would or maybe should have been exposed to. So it was surprising, given how much art house exposure I had, to have one screwball Hollywood buddy comedy encapsulate what movies really should be to me in a way that grabbed me, really made an impression, and its message stuck with me through thick and thin for the rest of my life.
Be excellent to each other.
Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is a movie I should hate.
Gentlemen, you can do anything you want.
It's the story of two ignorant white guys bumbling their way through history, literally stealing things they think might help them without thought or feeling as to the consequences. There's a lot to unpack there. But Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is a film I love to this day that hasn't, as Revenge of the Nerds did, aged poorly to the point of failing a reevaluation.
You're that nerd.
Yeah.
You were wonderful.
Bill S. Preston Esquire and Ted Theodore Logan are two teenagers in a band. They're dangerously close to flunking history.
It seems to me the only thing you have learned is that Caesar is a salad dressing dude. I have no choice but to flunk the both of you. You're nerds.
A man from the future arrives
Greetings, my excellent friend.
Do you know when the Mongols ruled China?
and tells them that their music will become the basis of all civilization. It will bring about world peace. But to become that band, it is imperative that they pass their history class.
Gentlemen, I'm here to help you with your history report.
Already, this is genius. You can do stupid comedy stupid and succeed. You can do smart comedy smart
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
and succeed. But it takes real genius to do stupid comedy smart.
Excuse me. You know, are there any personages of historical significance around here?
Bill and Ted bumble their way through history, meeting and collecting historical figures they should have learned about in a textbook, but where's the fun in that when we can use a time-traveling phone booth to conscript historical figures to help you give probably the most famous fictitious oral report in all of cinema?
Hello, San Dimas. Please welcome, for the final report of the afternoon, from all throughout history, some of the greatest people who have ever lived in their 1988 World Tour.
The beats of Bill and Ted, unlike many films on which I've done essays, Fury Road aside, are easy to summarize. Bill and Ted have a problem.
Listen to this. Express to the class how an important historical figure from each of your time periods would view the world as San Dimas, 1988. We are in danger of flunking most heinously tomorrow, Ted.
Bill and Ted meet Rufus. Rufus gives them a time machine. They use said time machine to visit Napoleonic France to pick up, well, you know. The Old West for Billy the Kid.
What I win, I keep. What you win, I keep.
Sounds good, Mr. the Kid.
And then, for expedience's sake, the movie's not even mine, we montage through the abduction or conscription of our other personages of historical significance. And then returning home for some fun and games at a local mall.
Hi, I'm Billy. This here is Socrates.
Socrates.
We're from history. Hello, I'm Dr. Freud. What you may call me Sicky.
Oh my God.
Geek. What is a geek?
I need the Lincoln hat and the stupid beard back.
You don't understand. I'm Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, right. Ha ha ha.
Now, come on, mister. That's my hat and my beard.
Keep it up. You're looking great.
Focus.
If I hadn't seen this movie, I'd think the premise sounded about as stupid as a football bat, but it really manages not to be. Then the gang gives San Dimas High School a history lesson it won't soon forget.
Thank you, San Dimas High!
And our heroes pass history, living on to become the band that would save the world through their message of love and peace.
Your music will help put an end to war and poverty. It will align the planets and bring them into universal harmony, allowing meaningful contact with all forms of life, from extraterrestrial beings to common household pets. And it's excellent for dancing.
So what else is there to talk about? Why would I dive into this? Well, for one, a stated mission statement of this show is breaking apart things we love and going into what they could have done better. Let's start negative and end positive. First, the problematic. It is nearly impossible to watch a movie from the 80s and walk away feeling like it had a good heart. I mean, yes, they're out there, but we all seem to be operating in a world where certain truths were accepted, which we now rightfully reject. And it is with this in mind that I aim my criticism of those pining for a simpler time when jokes could exist without criticism. Okay, folks. That time literally didn't exist. There existed only a time where you, person pining for this simpler time, never had to hear about how these jokes hurt people who weren't the hegemonic you. Welcome to the era where the downtrodden get to yell back.
I am not a number. I am a free man.
Sorry, not sorry, that makes you feel the mild discomfort of knowing what an asshole you can be, and actually sorry that this same era brings with it a time when racism gets the same weight in a conversation as anti-racism. Truly did not see that one coming. I'm queer, so having one of my favorite movies do this, it didn't feel great. And how did Little Joe react to this kind of thing? Little Joe called people fags. Little Joe attacked queerness in all its forms and understood with great certainty that it was something he ought not be. That it was something to be derided and protected against. So a film whose ultimate message resonates deeply and personally with me to this day attacked me as a person. It said my personhood was invalid. I wasn't the butt of a joke like somebody who slips and falls is the butt of a joke.
Look up! Look down! Now look at Mr. Frying Pan!
I was the butt of a joke in that nobody who slips and falls should exist and they should all be put to death, is the background radiation of that joke. It's not funny. So next, I'm going to talk about a little concept called deification. James Lowen writes about this in a book called Lies My Teacher Told Me. If you find the title needlessly inflammatory, maybe give it a read anyway. It's totally worth it. Anyway, this is something we do to our historical figures. We boil them down, not just in media portrayals like this.
7 minutes ago, we, your forefathers, were brought forth upon a most excellent adventure.
But in our history books, into figures palatable to modern sensibilities who had no flaws and were uniformly good or uniformly bad. The Old West was not, on film or in many of our historical texts, a time where we brutalized and genocided, and yes, I'm using that as a verb, fuck off, entire peoples. It was a romantic time where high adventure was the order of the day and tough men made their way towards manifest destiny. It doesn't get to exist in our minds as it should, as a time of great societal achievement at the cost of a piece of our collective soul as we did great and terrible things simultaneously. It has to be one thing, good or bad. History is not filled with good or bad, it is filled with good and bad. The Old West was not entirely romantic. Genghis Khan was not a lovable oaf. Billy the Kid was not a goofy sidekick. Abraham Lincoln literally advocated slavery and was not, as we have been taught, a man who staunchly was against it to the point of unilaterally ending it. There's a lot more to history than that. But we seem incapable as a people to speak of things except in the binary. So it is with history, so it is with movies. It seems ridiculous that I have to say this out loud because much of the humor of this movie and other similar brandings of history are predicated on a shared knowledge many of us thought that we had. These things are only funny in a context where America understands them not to be true. And, unfortunately, the Nazis are back. Not people with whom I disagree I'm choosing to call Nazis. Self-identified Nazis who think the Jews and the blacks, their term not mine, and the gays, again their term not mine, should be exterminated, and that white genocide is a thing through breeding, a thing they have to protect against, and it's ridiculous. So understanding history isn't exactly our strong suit as a country right now, which brings me to the question so often asked of me. What do we do about problematic elements in the art we love? And my answer is, I'm making a whole show about it. You're watching it right now. You're one of the very few who are. Hi. But to answer the question of how we ingest art, of this type in a world where we literally cannot remember who the bad guys were in history, we have to examine this entirely common, hypothetical worst-case scenario. In this hypothetical, you, my viewer, are a mature, educated adult. You may be self-educated or you may be educated by a higher institution. It doesn't really matter for the context of this metaphor. You understand historical context. Your niece or nephew is visiting, or maybe you have kids. Doesn't really matter. You show them this movie, and they go on laughing about how French people are pushy jerks. Or they think Lincoln was a cut and dry hero.
Be excellent to each other. And party on, dudes!
Or they think, even more ridiculously than that Genghis Khan was a lovable doofus who dug Twinkies.
Want a Twinkie, Genghis Khan? Say please.
What do you do? And let's cage this in multiple choice. Do you A, do what everybody thinks I do and humorlessly rob that niece or nephew or son or daughter of their laughs by turning the movie off, telling them the portrayals were wrong and bad and that they shouldn't enjoy the thing they're enjoying? B, do what a sizable chunk of America is currently doing and insist that no problematic portrayal of other people or cultures or historical figures is up for criticism, and tell that kid all about the nasty, politically correct people who will try to rob them of their history by giving them a more accurate series of facts about said history? Or do you C, censor all art you deem problematic, or call for its removal from the zeitgeist of popular culture? D, do you use the movie as a jumping off point to explain the nuances of comedy and have an in-depth and probably very interesting and enlightening conversation about history and satire and how we use comedy to deconstruct complex concepts while maybe giving said niece, nephew, son, or daughter the space to ask a lot of questions? I'm not being subtle here in which I think is the right answer. As a country, we need to choose D. In my idyllic world, we don't ever censor art, but we do talk about it and learn from it, both in mistakes and successes. And we don't silence people exercising their free speech about art while claiming that that free speech is in violation of our own. You don't get to tell me not to make this show because it violates your free speech, motherfucker! This is my free speech! It's okay that Bill and Ted get some things wrong. In a world where we understand context and history, we can all clumsily march toward this film's ultimate goal, and thus, the positive. Bill and Ted are friends. They don't tear each other down.
Ted, good thinking, dude.
They support one another. They love one another.
Ted. Don't be dead, dude.
They're good friends.
You killed Ted, you medieval dickweed!
Not just to each other, but in their own naive way, to the world. Where one set of ostensibly lovable dipshits gave me this, Bill and Ted gave me this.
Excellent!
That's what it's really about. This movie, unlike a Revenge of the Nerds, gets to have its shittier elements ignored.
Fact.
Why? Because its heart was, ultimately, in the right place. Does this mean it is forgiven for doing all of those things? No. That's the point. I showed up just to say I thought those were shitty things that it shouldn't have done. But where Revenge of the Nerds showed up to say nerds are the new black people and rape is okay, so long as a nerd is doing it, this film shows up to tell us to be good. Does that mean it didn't do the shitty things that it did? No, but it does mean that I'm willing to walk past those things and go, yeah, alright, moving on. So Bill and Ted become something of a religion in their future. And their message is simple, and it's strong. And in the future of the movie, it lands. And it lands hard. This isn't a movie about how somebody telling everybody to be nice got nailed to a tree for all his troubles. It's a movie where this, actually, in the future...
Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes!
becomes this. The Bible is a hell of a thing, which is a just terrible way to begin a sentence. It encourages, above all, people to love one another and treat them well, to take care of the poor and the sick, the downtrodden. Yet too often, I've seen that book used to deride the poor and the sick and the downtrodden by the same people who would point to the Quran and claim it does the same. So those other religious folk have it all wrong. It's exhausting, to say the least, from those of us watching from the sidelines. Am I comparing Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure to hegemonic cultural religious texts? Yes! Yes, I am! Because this message...
Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes!
Good one, dude.
is always relevant. And if you can keep that in your heart without asking yourself, yeah, but who doesn't deserve that excellence? As you start a list of people you should hate, and you can reject that attitude in favor of being kind, I don't care if you got it from a holy book, a Hallmark card, or an 80s screwball time travel comedy. Be excellent to each other. For Soap of Justice Warriors, I'm Joe. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Special thanks to Daniel Stockman